Now, in fairness, you have to understand how difficult this is for the left. They're in a very tough spot, though of course they put themselves in this spot. They've decided to go all in defending drag shows for children. Given that this is an entirely indefensible and abhorrent and utterly shocking and degraded practice, there really aren't any good arguments available to them. They could therefore abandon their child drag advocacy and reclaim whatever sliver of dignity they might have had left. They could throw up their hands and say, okay, you know what? We may have gone a little too far with this. Actually, it is super weird and disgusting to have cross-dressing fetishists performing for preschoolers. So never mind. Let's just forget about this whole thing. They could do that, but they won't. They never backtrack. They never apologize. They never admit that they're wrong about anything. Their only option is to go full speed ahead all the time. And that leaves them scrambling for ways to justify the pedophilic combination of drag queens and children. This week on social media, they seem to think that they've maybe stumbled upon a talking point which might accomplish this feat for them. The problem is that the argument they've settled on actually undermines the premise that they seek to defend. Once again, they've pulled the pin out of the grenade and then they just dropped it at their own feet. Certainly not the first time that this has happened. So in recent days, Mrs. Doubtfire, the 1993 Robin Williams comedy where he pretends to be an old woman so that he can nanny his children without his estranged wife finding out. And it's one of those movies from the 90s that when you describe it now, it just sounds really weird. But that movie has been trending on Twitter, and that is due to tweets like this one from alleged comedian Whitney Cummings, who wrote, quote, "These old weirdos worried about drag queens and kids forgot that our favorite movies as kids were Tootsie, Mrs. Doubtfire, and The Nutty Professor." Yes, because the people who don't want men to cross-dress in front of children are weirdos. We're the ones who are weirdos. But this comparison to old comedies involving men in drag has become popular. Mocking concerns about the drag queen-child combination, Max Kennerly tweeted, "I was 11 when I saw Mrs. Doubtfire. It had a lasting negative impact on me. Specifically, I couldn't comprehend how they didn't realize this was cake icing, not facial cream. Had the whole world gone mad? My young mind was damaged." Emily Murnane, another woman who pretends to be a comedian, tweeted in a similar vein, "It's true, I watched Mrs. Doubtfire as a child and grew up to be a morally depraved loser, and I do not see how this could be a coincidence." Well, she wasn't joking about being a morally depraved loser, at least. A guy named David Grossman chimed in with his own version of this hilarious joke, tweeting, "You think that's bad? I was 13 when I saw Will Ferrell dress up as Janet Reno on SNL. This led directly to heroin." Now, there are many other examples of this talking point, but you get the idea. Many of us grew up watching comedies involving men in drag, and we turned out fine, relatively. So what's wrong with children at drag shows? That's like the argument. Well, the first and most obvious response is that, to my memory, there is no scene in Mrs. Doubtfire where Robin Williams strips down to a thong and twerks on the ground while children throw money at him. Maybe I go back and watch it again, but I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. That's precisely what happens, though, at drag shows. You don't have to be the most perceptive person in the world to notice a difference here. Namely, the difference is that the point of one is to be funny, while the point of the other is to be sexual. There's a reason why these drag shows are not at comedy clubs. They're at gay clubs. There's no neon sign in the background that says Chuckle Hut or Laugh Factory. Instead, the neon sign says, as was the case in one of these drag shows for kids, it's not going to lick itself. The drag events are sexually charged by their nature. That's the point of them. That's why they exist. The audience at a drag show does not sit there and point and laugh the whole time. They're not there to mock the drag queen for how ridiculous he looks. And the children at the drag show are not meant to come away with the idea that it's absurd or silly or stupid for men to dress like women. Quite the opposite. And that brings us to the second and most crucial point, and this is where the grenade goes off and blows to pieces the people who tried to throw it against us. The point is this. Mrs. Doubtfire could not exist today as a film. It couldn't be made. And that's not because conservatives would object. It's the left that would have a conniption fit over it. Why? Because the comedy in Mrs. Doubtfire and films similar to it entirely revolves around the fundamental absurdity of males dressing like females. We're supposed to laugh about it and at it. The cross-dressing man is essentially a clown wearing a ridiculous outfit for our amusement. Indeed, the comedy makes no sense. There is no comedy at all unless you recognize the differences between men and women and believe that somebody in one category can never cross over to the other. The laughs come from that basic understanding. Mrs. Doubtfire is funny because it's absurd, and it's absurd because a man is wearing women's clothing, and that's absurd. But the left says that we have to take cross-dressing men seriously. They say it's not comedy at all, but a deep expression of their inner being. What's more, they say gender is fluid, and so there's nothing fundamentally absurd about a biological male presenting himself as a female. In modern America, Mrs. Doubtfire would be condemned as transphobic, homophobic, gender exclusionary, reinforcing the gender binary and all that. Or else, if something like it was made today, it wouldn't be a comedy, but a drama. It would be the inspiring story of a man who identifies as an elderly woman and struggles for to be accepted, by society and his own family. Like if the exact movie of Mrs. Doubtfire had never existed and then was made in 2022, the left would watch it and either they would want to burn at the stake everybody involved, or they would think that it's an inspirational drama. Like they would not see it as a comedy. Unless I'm wrong. Perhaps I should take these leftists at their own word. They're saying that modern drag shows and Mrs. Doubtfire are the same. That's what they're saying. Okay, so can I then point and laugh at drag queens? Can I say that they look ridiculous? Can I teach my children that when they see a man dressed like a woman, it's funny and silly and they should not take it seriously? They should laugh at it. Now, I have taught my children that's exactly what I've told them on the few occasions when we've been out in public and they have, unfortunately, incidentally, witnessed something like this. I've told them that's silly, that's ridiculous, that's all that is. And I'm going to tell my children that whether I have permission from the left or not. But are they now endorsing that approach? Something tells me they're not intentionally anyway. They're just saying whatever they think will be most effective in the moment, even if it contradicts everything else they say in every other moment, as usual. And for that reason, they are today canceled. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click the notification button to get more content like this. If you want to watch or listen to the full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe today. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.